Long ago, the North Woods slept beneath a sky of endless winter frost. A lone lumber camp glowed like a small ember in the vast wilderness. A giant man stepped into the night, his boots sinking into the white. He searched the quiet forest floor while the moonlight caught the ice. A tiny creature shivered alone in the deep, unforgiving winter drifts. The giant lifted the small calf and wrapped him in his warm flannel. Men gathered around the fire to witness the strange blue newcomer. Kindness filled the camp as they offered food to the shivering guest. The blue calf rested by the flames as the snow drifted high outside. By morning, the young ox stood taller than the heavy supply barrels. Days passed quickly as the creature grew to match the height of trees. Soon he towered over the camp, a gentle giant with a friendly heart. His warm breath melted the ice to help the thirsty animals find water. Creatures of the woods gathered safely beside their massive protector. At dawn, he pulled heavy logs through the snow with effortless power. The men walked beside him, working as one team in the frozen silence. A great journey began as they traveled west across the open frontier. When the path was blocked, he cleared the way with his mighty strength. He stood steady in the rushing river to shield the traveling wagons. A fresh trail opened through the woods as he moved the fallen timber. Through the blinding blizzard, he pulled the heavy sled with purpose. Man and beast moved as one soul through the heart of the great storm. Families emerged to find the supplies they needed to survive the cold. Children watched in wonder as the giant ox lowered his head in peace. His heavy steps left deep prints in the soft earth after a heavy rain. The tracks filled with water, reflecting the sky like polished mirrors. He pushed massive stones aside to shape the hills of the growing land. New streams began to flow through the valleys he helped to transform. At night, the men found warmth against his massive, steady presence. He remained a silent guardian, while the weary travelers found repose. Summer heat brought the flash of lightning and the smell of dry smoke. Flames raced through the brush, forcing the people to flee for safety. The giant ox charged toward the river to save the forest from ruin. With a swing of his tail, he sent waves of water over the hot flames. Together, they fought the fire until the danger finally began to fade. A forest breathed again as the rain fell on the cooling, dark earth. They walked through the quiet clearing, ready to rebuild what was lost. As the world changed, the old wild places began to slowly disappear. They carried a basket of green saplings to start a brand new forest. Every tree was planted with care to ensure the future would stay green. A massive hoof pressed the soil down to protect the new life within. The workers learned that their strength was meant for healing the land. Time flowed onward as the young trees grew tall under the summer sun. One last time, they walked through the woods under a winter moonlight. From a high ridge, they looked back at the world they helped to build. They stepped into the deep wilderness and vanished into the soft mist. The northern lights danced above the trees in a display of pure color. A glowing spirit moved through the pines, a legend born of the stars. The silhouette faded into the horizon, leaving a quiet peace behind. His spirit remains in the wind, watching over the land he once loved. The ancient forest stood silent as a distant orange glow began to spread. A giant lumberjack stood among the pines with his loyal blue ox nearby. Every heavy step he took left a footprint where new life began to bloom. He knelt to touch the saplings as the great beast watched with calm eyes. An old owl spoke of a final journey before they became part of a legend. His resolve hardened as he realized his strength was needed for a new path. A regal eagle descended from the morning sky to land upon a broken stump. A thick wall of fog rolled over the ridges like a living tide of shadow. They began their long walk as guardians of the land they once conquered. They climbed through narrow mountain passes where the wind whipped around. Careful hands saved a small creature while the Alps cleared the stony path. The vast plains stretched out before them under a sky filled with thunder. They stopped to help a weary family fix their broken wheel in the dust. The great river was dying, so the ox carved a new path for the cold water. Life returned to the banks as the fresh stream began to flow once again. Colossal redwood trunks disappeared into the mist, high above their heads. Animals emerged from the brush to follow their new leaders towards safety. Snow began to fall as they moved across the frozen lakes of the far north. They rescued a traveler from the ice with steady strength and quiet care. Their journey became a legend told through every changing landscape seen. They entered a hidden canyon where the rocks looked like sleeping titans. The earth seemed to remember an older age in the stillness of the canyon. Ancient tools lay buried in the dust near fires that burned without wood. An elder giant appeared from the shadows to speak of a new kind of hero. The giant understood that he must become a protector of the world's balance. Dark clouds gathered as the air grew thick with the weight of the storm. Great walls of fog surged through the lowlands like a warning from nature. They moved through the lashing rain to find where the land was vulnerable. Creatures of the wood guided people away from the rising flood of water. Families huddled together as the blue ox shielded them from the gale wind. He held a fallen tree steady so the last of the travelers could pass by. He knelt in the mud to listen to the pulse of the earth beneath his hand. The storm began to settle as they shaped the water's path around the homes. A pale shaft of light cut through the clouds onto the recovering forest. They walked into a quiet clearing where young trees stood in the wet soil. He planted a single pine tree with a gentle hand and a solemn stillness. A legendary axe was set into the earth to rest beside the small sapling. The steel turned to leaves as the handle took root in the fertile ground. A great tree towered above him as a symbol of the world he chose to save. Wise words echoed through the needles as the birds returned to the woods. They began their final walk toward the mountains as the morning mist rose. Their massive forms began to blend with the stone and shadow of the peaks. The land absorbed their memory as they merged into the rocky ridgeline. Only a suggestion of their shapes remained before the mist closed in tight. Years later, children gathered around fires to hear the stories of the past. They smiled as the wind whispered through the pines like an old friend's voice. The world felt richer and more alive with healthy forests and deep rivers. A massive tree towered over the lush woods under a sky filled with stars. Moonlight glinted off the leaves as the forest breathed in quiet harmony. The guardian of the North Woods stood tall beneath the light of the stars.